Hey everyone, welcome back to Fighting Spirit Film. First of all, I've got a special guest with me today. Please introduce yourself.
I'm Ty Singh. I'm the season producer for the BFI Film Audience Network season, The Art of Action.
Rock and roll.
You want to nail the bank robbers and be a big hero? Definitely. Then here it is.
Let's dance.
100% pure adrenaline.
Have you finished?
I'm only just beginning.
It's currently going on around the UK till the end of December.
Yes, so still get your tickets while you still can.
Go to bfiartofaction.co.uk and you can see what events are going on near you.
I'm going to start off with a very easy question. Describe yourself in three fictional characters.
Um, I'm going to go first of all with Indiana Jones because I studied history all through my educational career, and I've always loved the idea of a historian beating the shit out of bad guys and going on epic adventures. Um, it's a bit of a cliched one, but Lee in Enter the Dragon, Bruce Lee's character, and imaginatively called Lee, because he is essentially James Bond, but Asian. And I think of all men of a certain age, Bruce Lee's just always been an icon. And I think lastly, I'm going to Captain Janeway from Star Trek Voyager, because as a lifelong Star Trek fan, I've often wondered not who's the best character, who's the best captain, but who's the best captain I would like to serve under. And I reckon Janeway would actually know who I am, and as well as being an awesome all-round captain, she can throw down when she's got to.
I think I would work for Cisco.
Cisco's good, but I think Cisco wouldn't take you out to go see a baseball match
Mm,
unless you really got his attention. He only does that with the senior staff. I don't
mm.
think Cisco knows half the crew on board Deep Space Nine.
Nobody has ever answered Lee.
Really?
Whenever I ask this question, nobody has ever answered Lee. When did you first get into action cinema?
Action cinema? I mean, my mum was a big musical fan, and even in films like Seven Brides for Seven Brothers, where the seven brothers are getting into fisticuffs with all the other men at the barn building. I think me and my brothers were just kind of always into action cinema, and then as you kind of grow up, that it goes out into like more mainstream action films, like the Indiana Jones films, Star Wars, James Bond movies, and then you discover Hong Kong cinema, and then you just discover other action films from around the world. So I think it's always been there.
And what do you love most about action cinema?
I think it kind of exemplifies why I love cinema, and it's pure escapism. It's pure, keeping you on the edge of your seat, wanting to know what happens. I mean, I love a good drama, I love a good musical, I love a good horror, but something about action cinema, it's cinema spectacle at its finest, whether it's like Tom Cruise doing his own stunts or just something really, really simple like Run Lola Run, where you're just following a character kind of run around the city to save her boyfriend. I think action cinema has just always been a big part of the evolution of film, and I don't think you would have cinema where it is today if it wasn't for the pioneers of action cinema.
And what do you think makes a great action film?
I think the best action films are the ones where you honestly aren't sure if your hero's going to make it. So the ones where your action hero is bloodied and battered by the end. So whether that's like Jackie Chan in the police story films or Harrison Ford as Indiana Jones, they are always getting their ass handed to them. So I think that your heroes like that, that's what makes a great action film, where the kind of action drives forward the character. The action films where, your hero never bleeds is inherently less interesting than one who's constantly having to get back up on his feet. Someone like John Wick, someone like Indiana Jones, they're constantly getting, literally in John Wick's case, kicked down staircases and having to kind of climb all the way back up to succeed.
And what do you think is the future of action cinema?
I mean, I don't know. As a genre, it's constantly evolving. I remember watching Doug Liman's new Roadhouse, and people were kind of commenting on like the digital editing and where they were blending the actors hitting each other. And it was more noticeable in that. But then I realized they did that in Raging Fire, where Nicholas Say and Donnie Yen are going at it. And I was watching the behind the scenes footage. So you had Donnie Yen beating a green pillow really hard. And then they kind of blended Nicholas Say's face into that. So it looks like he's hitting him really hard. And I'd never noticed that when watching it because it seemed absolutely flawless. And at the same time, really realistic and visceral. And there was no kind of um, hint of CGI trickery like there was in Roadhouse. So I think if visual effects are kind of worked into action in that very subtle way, that will be really interesting to watch in the future. But in terms of how it's constantly evolving, I look forward to seeing what happens.
What do you think are the pros and cons of using CGI in this particular genre?
I think it always comes down to weight. So when you have like a digital double of an actor falling and they're like bouncing off things, you can often tell it's not a real stunt man from the way they hit things. Um, and often in some cases you can't use a stuntman to do that. But I think if you can't use a stuntman and do it safely, then the audience aren't going to believe that the character would have survived that anyway. So at the end of John Wick 3, where Ian McShane kicks John Wick's character off, it was a stuntman that kind of falls and then bounces off several things and then lands on a crash mat, and then they augmented the background around, the crash mats. So I think there is a place for visual effects in action films, but I think the reason that audiences want to watch action is they want to know that the actor did at least 80% of it, and the things that he couldn't do, it was a professional stunt person doing it, and that's why it's so exciting to watch. I think when you're just watching an action sequence and you know that everything's created in the computer and it's just digital doubles of two characters fighting each other, you zone out because you know the stakes aren't real and what you're watching isn't inherently exciting.
Do you think it would be difficult for an actor with a martial arts background to work with CGI, especially if they're punching a pillow rather than a person, that it's quite different? It requires more imagination, that it would be difficult for them.
Yeah, I once viewed Benny the Jet Akides, and he once told me that going into films after having a full, contact martial arts career, he said it wasn't as hard as you would have thought because he just kind of got used to it, and he had spent like a lifetime doing tricks where he had to kick a cigarette out of someone's mouth. So it was just kind of getting used to it, kind of getting used to the choreography. And I think in many cases, an on-screen fight is very much like a dance. You've got to hit your marks. Your partner's going to move out the way. I think it'll be harder if you're not fighting against anyone there, because then you've got to do your moves, someone's got to do their moves, and they've got to blend it together. So I wouldn't probably recommend it for long extended sequences, but the shorter the better. I'm sure there's a way that professional stunt coordinators can sell it.
Do you think also with having like an action sequence or like a fight, the audience would like to feel as if they are capable of doing it, so they would prefer to see two actors or like two martial artists because they would think that they could do it themselves?
I do like what 87 North are doing, where they get actors who you wouldn't think have uh the background for action films. So someone like Bob Odenkirk and Nobody, or they had that Alison Janney led action film that was on Netflix. These are two actors like in their 50s, 60s, and they train them up to a degree where they manage to sell the action scenes. And I think audiences like that because someone with like a Keanu Reeves or a Charlize Theron, you're like, oh yeah, no, you're a very fit Hollywood action star. You put in the training, but someone like Bob Odenkirk, that's like I can't see him leading an action film, and I think everyone was really amazed by what he managed to do for Nobody, and I'm looking forward to the sequel, especially that now Timo, is it Jato, the Indonesian director of The Shadow Strays and The Night Comes for Us, is directing it. Apologies for the pronunciation. But yeah, I can't wait to see what he manages to do.
So now on to talk about the art of action.
Stop it now, I mean it. Stop it. You're ignorant. Stop it. You're acting like a child.
Coming for you. Look, there comes one of them now. Here comes now.
Can you tell us how the initial idea came about for it?
Sure. So every year, the BFI Film Audience Network, which is basically the network of independent cinemas around the country, there is a big UK-wide season that is made possible through National Lottery funding. This year, it kind of fell to the organization that I work for to kind of come up with the concept. So I came up with the idea of doing the art of action because I feel that of all the genres, I think action is the one that's taken for granted and not properly recognized. And this has been ongoing in that there's not kind of an action Oscar, it's not recognized at the BAFTAs. And I feel horror is having its day. You're getting people like Jordan Peele and certain quote unquote elevated horrors getting awards recognition. But I feel that for many people, action is just taken for granted. So I wanted to come up with a season that showed that action's always been there from the beginning of cinema and its influences all the way through to now. So that was looking at like films like Buster Keaton's The General, Harold Lloyd's The Three Agents and The Three Ages. And when I was putting it together, showing the influence of people like that on Jackie Chan in the Project A films or the Police Story films, and drawing that line because many people at the BFI weren't aware that Jackie Chan's biggest influence was Buster Keaton. And then also talking about the East and West influence. So like Akira Kurosawa was influenced by John Ford, then people like John Sturgis Sam Peckinpah influenced by Akira Kurosawa, and then John Woo was influenced by Peckinpah. So that constant borrowing from around the world to evolve the genre, and then also kind of recognizing underrepresented voices in action, particularly women, kind of highlighting that not only were there female stunt performers in the early days of silent cinema from people like Helen Gibson, to kind of recognizing the next generation of female action directors like Nida Manzoor, who released Polite Society last year. So it was kind of pulling together those three strands, the history of action through the ages, underrepresented voices in action, and that East-West kind of borrowing over the past 100 years that I kind of really wanted to capture in a season. And from that, cinemas and film festivals from around the UK could kind of go from the kind of films that we suggested for these strands, could go, I want to do that, that, and that. And then maybe I'll show this, this, and this to kind of appeal to my audience. So for like the history and the evolution of cinema, we put in Buster Keaton's The General, Errol Flynn's The Adventures of Robin Hood, John Frankenheimer's The Train and Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon. So, for example, if a cinema wanted to do, I'm going to do Errol Flynn's Robin Hood and Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon, but then also want to do The Princess Bride and The Mask of Zorro to show kind of like the greatest sword fights on screen and the actors like Antonio Banderas that did a lot of their own sword fighting. Could I do that? It'd be like, absolutely, that perfectly meets the remit. So, that was kind of the idea, and it's been a massive success. And we've got over 70 venues around the country putting on their own
Oh,
Art of Action seasons. So it's really exciting. And of course, Fighting Spirit Film Festival kicked it all off in September, and that was wonderful to see because I couldn't imagine doing an Art of Action season and not getting you guys
yeah.
involved in some capacity.
It makes like perfect sense to blend the two together.
Yeah, not only do you have an audience that love action films, but you're very big in the stunt community. And we partnered with the British Stunt Register on this because obviously, if we're celebrating the UK stunt community, it makes sense to get them involved
Mm.
and to tell them about it. So, yeah, absolutely, it made sense to me.
What was the process of developing Art of Action? Was it like a difficult process of having to like contact everyone about it?
So,
How did it all work?
yeah, there was like a programming group of kind of organizations from around the country. So I kind of led on it, and then we talked to organizations like Reclaim the Frame, Tape Collective, venues from all around the country, and was like, if we're doing an Art of Action season, what would you like to see? What would make you want to get involved? And obviously, doing women in action was very exciting for some of them. But one thing that kept kind of coming up was like, we'd really like to show Point Break. And Point Break's been really hard to show nationwide in this country theatrically for a long time due to the rights being somewhat nebulous. So it took me a couple of months to find out who had the rights, and then the incredible distribution team at BFI managed to secure the theatrical rights. And that's why on the 8th of November, there's going to be a big UK re-release of Point Break in a new 4K restoration.
If you want the ultimate, you gotta be willing to pay the ultimate price. It's not tragic to die doing what you love.
So that's really exciting.
In
But
that
it's very
case,
much
in that case, this interview will be up before 8th of November to get everybody
and
to go to the
then
cinema and watch it.
exactly. Go to bfiartofaction.co.uk and see where it's screening near you and go see it because everyone thinks kind of Keanu Reeves became an action star from that film, and he did, but it's Patrick Swayze who was not only a professional dancer, but he was a qualified skydiver, and you can see it Swayze doing a lot of his own skydiving in that film. So talk about actors doing their own action. Swayze is doing some mad shit in that film.
And how were the films screened being chosen?
Sure. So for the history of action, where we went with Buster Keaton's The General, Errol Flynn's Adventures of Robin Hood, The Train, and Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon, I tried to choose films which not only had actors doing their own stunts, like Errol Flynn, like Chow Yun-fat, like Burt Lancaster, but films that represented a certain evolutionary jump in the history of cinema. So Errol Flynn's Technicolor Robin Hood adventure, Burt Lancaster's kind of gritty war film that John Frankenheimer did, and then in the early 2000s with kind of Yung Woo Ping coming to Hollywood, doing a lot of wire fu. In the women in action, we kind of chose Run Lola Run, that's celebrating its 25th anniversary this year. Yes, Madam, with Michelle Yeoh and Cynthia Rothrock teaming up. Kathryn Bigelow's Point Break, because obviously she directed it, and Nida Manzoor's Polite Society. So again, it's a mixture of films from around the world, different nationalities, different cultures, because I really wanted to have a mixture of films and stuff that wasn't just from America or the UK. And then for the film strand where, East and Western influences are kind of working on each other, the BFI put out their new 4K restoration of Seven Samurai, obviously one of the most influential action films of all time. We've also got Sam Peckinpah's The Wild Bunch on re-release because it influenced so much of John Woo's films. And then Eureka Entertainment allowed us to put out the Police Story trilogy. So that's available to book. So those were kind of all the films that we made available for venues to kind of book at a discounted rate. But obviously, if they wanted to do their own things, they wanted to do the Wild Bunch and then do Hard Target to show, John Woo's influence and then a John Woo's film, then they obviously could. So it was lots of kind of seeing what was available, what would interest other venues to show. But from my point of view, it's just having a nice mixture of films, stuff that wasn't just American based, stuff that wasn't being shown on TV all the time. I'm very conscious of like the ITV4 effect. So people were like, why didn't you put forward The Matrix? It's celebrating its 25th anniversary. And my argument was always that The Matrix is probably on ITV4 right now. So, we kind of want to show films that people don't often get to see on the big screen. So that was it. Kind of like, what do people want to see on the big screen? What's different that's out there? And what can we actually get the licenses for?
I can remove this question if need be, but were there any films that you wanted to screen but weren't able to?
Absolutely. All of John Woo's Hong Kong films. And basically, it's because you can't get the theatrical licenses for them. They all seem to be kind of held up by Kowloon property developers. I'm sure you guys at Fighting Spirit, you've probably tried to show The Killer or Hard Boiled over the years. But no one seems to be able to grant the theatrical rights. So it's really hard. There were certain Jackie Chan films that I wanted to do, like Project A, to kind of tie in with that Buster Keaton, Harold Lloyd influence. But the licenses from the Hong Kong distributors were just too expensive. So we had to kind of go with the Police Story films because they were more affordable. But yeah, it
Was that
happens.
the most challenging part of creating the art of action, or was there a more what were the challenges that you faced when making the art of action?
I think the challenge was the Point Break re-release because that took over 6 months of negotiation by the BFI distribution team to make that happen. So while it took me 2 months to find out who actually had the rights, when I passed it over to the BFI distribution team, it just took a lot on their part to make it happen. So I'd say was simultaneously one of the biggest challenges, but also one that I'm really proud that we managed to pull off for the season.
I was about to ask you what part of the art of action are you most proud of, but I'm assuming that was the part that you're most proud of.
I mean, a big UK-wide re-release of Point Break. I'm very happy that we managed to pull that off. And yeah, the reaction we've got from loads of venues who are like, "Ah, I can't wait to show Point Break on the big screen." It's been wonderful to get that reaction.
What was the best audience reaction that you've encountered?
Well, I got to present a preview screening of The Seven Samurai at the BFI IMAX in London, and it was a full house. So that's 500 people in an IMAX screen, all about to watch Seven Samurai. And before it, we played the trailer for the Art of Action season and the trailer for the Point Break re-release. And kind of hearing the oohs and the ahs and the excitement from the audience, it was kind of like, a validation on all the work that we've done for the past almost a year to kind of get the season up and running. So that was incredible to see. And it's the first time I've presented a film to 500 people in an IMAX screen. So that was really exciting.
And now time for speed round. So you have 10 seconds to pick a film for each question, but it has to be films that were screened at the Art of Action.
Okay. All right. So films that are key titles as part of the Art of Action season. All right. Okay. I can do this.
First question, if someone wanted to get to know you, which film would you choose?
I would probably choose Police Story 3 because I love Jackie Chan movies. I love the original Police Story. I love Police Story 2, but obviously pairing up Jackie Chan and Michelle Yeoh together, I think that Police Story 3 is one of the best action films ever made. So that.
What's the best film to watch on a plane?
I think the best film to watch on a plane is something that you're either really, really familiar with and love, and you can quote it backwards, or it would be something where you don't have to pay that much attention. You can just drink lots of red wine. Obviously, all the films that we've picked, you've got to see on the big screen. So for this, it would have to be something that I've seen lots and lots of times, and I know back to front. And so for that reason, I think it would probably be The Adventures of Robin Hood with Errol Flynn, because I watched that a lot as a kid. It's fun, it's bright, it's colorful. It's kind of perfect for those crappy TV screens on a plane where the color contrast is all wrong half the time.
Which film has the best action choreography?
Well, obviously, Crouching Tiger's choreography is done by Yung Woo Ping, arguably one of the greatest action choreographers of all time. So it would make sense to kind of go with that.
Which film has the best cinematography?
Again, I think because of its influence on so many films, on so many directors, I'm going to say Akira Kurosawa's Seven Samurai. I mean, there's a reason it's at the top of so many best of lists, and so many filmmakers cite it as one of their biggest influences, whether it's like the final battle in the rain, the silhouettes of your heroes. Yeah, Seven Samurai.
And which cinematic universe would you like to live in?
So the world of any of these key action films.
Mhm.
I mean, it's probably got to be Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon, isn't it? Where you can jump from building to building, that slight mysticism, dying for love. Yeah, I think Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon. I think the other worlds might be too brutal or too realistic and too grim. So I'm going to go with Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon.
Well, thank you so much for the interview. Good luck with the rest of the season. Everyone go out to your local cinema or not your local cinema. Well, if you're in London, your local cinema.
Yeah, I mean, in London, there's a big season going on at BFI South Bank. So there's everything from Indian action films to obviously the Point Break remake. I'm doing a Q&A with Nida Manzoor there on November for a big screening of Polite Society. I think I'm even introducing a screening of Hard Target there at the end of November. I'm introducing a screening of 3 The Hard Way there next Wednesday, but I don't think this interview will be up by then. But again, just go to bfiartofaction.co.uk. I am really selling this website to see what events are happening near you.
Also, we're wearing matching shirts, but that is completely by accident. We did not plan this. This was the first shirt that I had picked out from my drawer.
I mean, I thought I was just going to be on brand for Fighting Spirit, and Arrow sent me this when we showed Way of the Dragon at the film festival I run here in Bristol, Forbidden Worlds Film Festival. So this is I think it's just great timing, great minds.
Yeah.
We're just on brand. That's what we're doing.
Cool. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me, and I'm glad Fighting Spirit could be part of the Art of Action season. It's always great to get you, Wang, Sue, Will, and the rest of the team involved. And yeah, your festival this year at Hackney Picturehouse was incredible. I'm glad we could be involved in some small capacity.